What's up everyone, Man here, and we're going to do another Modern meta breakdown video. And this time, we're going to be talking about Reanimator in Modern. Alright, so you can see the deck list here. We've got some cards scrolling across the top of the screen there. If this is your first time watching one of our Modern meta breakdown videos, here's what we do. We kind of go through the deck, talk about what the reason is behind certain card choices over other certain card choices, what is the main strategy the deck is trying to do, how you might disrupt this strategy, how you might protect when you're trying to do the specific strategy that you're doing. We've been highlighting different decks for feels like forever now. We've been doing at least 50 or so videos of this over many couple of years, so if you want to look at the playlist and check out specific decks, you guys can be able to check that out on the channel as well. But do want to highlight this specific deck because this is a newer deck that people have been trying to make work since Modern Horizons 2. I posted up and discussed cards that I thought could see Modern play from our most recent Midnight Hunt adventures, and there is a card from here from Midnight Hunt. But you'll see a lot of the cards from this list are the Modern Horizons 2. It's crazy how much of an impact a Modern focused set is on the meta. We saw it with Modern Horizons 1, things like Urza, things like Hogak. Modern Horizons 2 is no different with the powerful creatures that they've added in here. You can see two of those main ones, of course, are our Grief and our Solitude here. Now, the most common version that we're seeing from Reanimator now is falling on under that Esper. That's that white, blue, and black style of play. Our main stuff that you're seeing scrolling across is here's our main power creatures, here's your graveyard shenanigans that you can return creatures with, that sort of stuff. So there's been variations of reanimation style decks that have existed. Grizzled brand style decks, if you guys are familiar with those, and being able to sneak cards from the graveyard, that's specific legendary creatures for one turn, right? You're doing Through the Breach, you're kind of sneaking around things that way. This is, I'm bringing this creature back and he's staying. So things like Persist will help us bring those creatures back, right? Target non-legendary Unburial Rights will help bring a creature back a little bit more expensive, so we got to kind of grind to get up to that 4 or 5 mana depending on how it goes, because Unburial Rights does have that flashback, so we can cost it for 4 instead of the 5. So we have no problem with throwing that into our graveyard off. And so the main way is, how are we going to get cards into our graveyard? Well, we have things like Faithful Mending, which you guys, we talked about our Midnight Hunt stuff. Gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and it's got that flashback. So you should be able to hit an Unburial Rights, you should be able to hit one of these creatures that we care about. Now, the Grief and Solitude from Modern Horizons 2, we'll talk about why these creatures are the creatures that they're running. Each one of these creatures, Grief, Muldrifter, Solitude, and Archon of Cruelty, have an ETB effect. That means when they enter the battlefield, something happens. So we see these evoke costs that these 3 creatures have. So it's an alternative cost that you're going to be casting, right? It's going to be usually less mana. It might have another effect with it. In particular, like Muldrifter here has that evoke for 3 mana instead of paying 5. So enters the battlefield, you get the ETB effect of drawing 2 extra cards, but then you have to sacrifice that as well. So basically ETB triggers and then it sacrifices. So bye-bye, all gone, don't have to worry about it. Same thing with our Grief, right? But instead of paying mana for it, normally costs 4 to be able to play, you have to exile a black card from your hand. Solitude is the same way, except you're exiling a white card from your hand. Now both of these do have a pretty powerful effect when they enter the battlefield. Grief does basically give you that access to Thoughtseize minus having to worry about your life. Solitude is you get a Swords to Plowshare on a creature, 3/2 with lifelink, and when he enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature. That creature controller gains life equal to that creature's power. So very, very powerful effect. So getting these out to help swing things in your favor is really good. Archon of Cruelty is built a lot like some of those Uros that we got to see previously, right? For Throne of Eldraine, here's Uro has this ability to draw cards, play lands, right? There's multiple stuff that you get to do when he enters the battlefield. Archon of Cruelty is along that same lines. He costs 8 normally for this flying Archon. It's a 6/6. Really, we're just trying to sneak it out with Persist and then Burial Rites, right? Oh, a 5/5 flyer. How are you going to deal with this? Because when he enters the battlefield or attacks, so very similar to our Titan cycle, Grave Titan, Infernal Titan, right? Primeval Titan for all you modern players out there. So when he enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacks a creature or a planeswalker, discards a card, and loses 3 life. You also draw a card and gain 3 life. It has so much of a swing effect with the way that this deck is built. It's like, once one of my powerful creatures gets out, then the tide has turned, and I'm going to be riding high and being able to just beat you out with these powerful creatures. It doesn't have as many powerful creatures as, say, like a Grizzlebrand, because that is legendary, so you can't get it. So that's why we're not seeing people run super powered creatures. But Archon of Cruelty is really, really strong. So the idea is to get one of those creatures into our graveyard reanimated, or need be, as we are waiting to get those powerful creatures, we're going to be using our evoke cost. Now the evoke cost is really, really nice because we get kind of double duty in this. This gets us an effect that can disrupt our opponent, whether it's making a card get stripped from their hand, whether it's exiling one of their strong creatures, and then we get this creature in our graveyard. Right, we have to sacrifice it immediately. Same thing with Muldrifter. We sacrifice it immediately after we get that ETB effect, and then we get to be able to reanimate that creature afterward. Right, that's where our Unburial Rites comes in. That's where our Persist comes in. But if we're running a little bit slower, maybe we have an earlier turn play. We're playing some Unmarked Grave, being able to throw stuff in our graveyard. Right, we're setting up for our Faithful Mending to throw things in our graveyard. So we basically have, 7 different cards that are all about putting cards in our graveyard, right? Faithful Mending is going to be doing it, Solitude, Muldrifter, Grief, as well as our Unmarked Grave, give or take. We've got those as graveyard fuel effects. You have protection in this already built in, Prismatic Ending, right? We see this already in kind of the control list. You are paying mana to be able to exile a non-land permanent, right? So if it's a 1-cost creature, 2-cost creature, it's not going to be that hard to get rid of it with Prismatic Ending. Also, annoying planeswalkers, like the one we're running, cost 3, so you can be able to commit 4 mana and get rid of that Teferi Time Reveler. It's in here as a protection effect to help make sure that we can be able to cast our reanimation spells on our turn, because they are sorcery speed. And we don't want to have to worry so much about it, right? Unburial Rites, sorcery speed, Persist, sorcery speed. So it's going to be a little bit before we get our big creatures out. So making sure we can cast them without any issues is no problem. Plus the delay effect, return target artifact, creature, and enchantment, draw a card, seems great. One fun thing that this list is running, because this is, again, still newer, people are figuring it out, trying to figure out the most optimal way to play. I really like this blink effect that they've gotten here. Talking about Ephemerate, which is our 1 white instant exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's got rebound, so when you cast it, it gets exiled. You can cast it again on your upkeep. Basically, Ephemerate gives us multiple triggers of that ETB effect, right? We've brought out Archon of Cruelty, sweet. Now if we're bringing him out and he's got a -1/-1 counter on it, well, if we use our Ephemerate, it blinks it, those counters are now gone, and he comes back as a 6/6. Gets a secondary ETB effect, making sure that my opponent has basically had to discard 2 cards, sacrifice 2 creatures or planeswalkers, losing 6 life, and then I get to draw 2 cards and gain 6 life. Again, we talk about this deck is all about that swing. So if you like that swingy style, this is the type of deck to look into being able to play. Right? It does have a hard time against some of those graveyard hate strategies that exist, and that's why it's going to be relying on something like Teferi to come down, bounce whatever enchantment or artifact you might have out, like if you have Grafdigger's Cage, if you have Leyline of the Void getting in the way, so you can be able to go, okay, I'm just going to do one big quick turn, bounce this annoying hate card, now I'll combo. So you have to kind of delay to get there. So it does have that effect. It is not full of a lot of fluff, right? It's very consistent with the strategy. I really like how clean and concise this list is starting to look. Again, this is still early tunings of the list, so it's going to be interesting to see, you know, come springtime of 2022 how things are going to be looking, right? We're recording this in November of 2021, so as new cards are spoiled, as the meta shifts a little bit, what adjustments is the list going to start making? Sideboard is kind of going along the same plan. We'll highlight that real quick, right? We're going for removal spells, protection spells, and disruption spells. So removal is our Fatal Push. An additional Prismatic Ending is in here. We also have our additional Time Reveler in here as well. But this is a really cool Serra Emissary. We talked about this recently in another deck that was running it. Basically just, hey, here's a super powerful effect. A 7/7 flyer enters the battlefield, choose a card type, and now you and creatures you control have protection of that card type. Instant, sorcery, enchantments, artifact, creatures, planeswalkers, doesn't matter what it is, you pick it, you're protected from it. So having just like a sneaky extra card in here in your graveyard's nice. Leyline of the Void, great against mirror matchups, great against any other graveyard shenanigans that might be happening, because it forces your opponent to have all of their stuff go into exile instead of the graveyard. And there are some graveyard shenanigans running around, as we can see with this list, so it makes sense to be able to running it. Stony Silence is our activated ability of artifacts can't be activated, so just kind of hosing other decks, right? This disruption we're talking about. Thoughtseize is in here. It basically double duty with Grief, but if you're playing against kind of a combo deck, we talked about combo deck last time on Modern Meta Breakdown, so that's why this Thoughtseize is useful here. But if you're trying to fight against this deck, it is going to care about how can you disrupt the graveyard, how can you prevent them from bringing back these powerful creatures. So that's why you see a playset of Leyline of the Void in the graveyard. Any sort of effect like that is going to help out a lot. The one downside is that things like Grief, right, that are in here, things like Solitude, these 4-5 mana spells, they could be able to just cast them outright. As the game goes longer and this deck relies on those big swings, the power of Archon of Cruelty in here, right, these ways to kind of gain incremental life throughout the game, get these card advantages going, it's going to be hard and hard to deal with. But the list is shaping up in a nice place at this point in time. So I hope you guys have been liking what this list looks like. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this list. If it's something that you feel is going to be something that's going to stick around in this version of it as this kind of Esper style of play, or do you think it's going to start shifting, maybe adjust the color base, adjust the creatures that they're using? Who knows? I'm always a fan of trying to sneak in Sundering Titan into my Reanimator list, just because I'm a little bit of a bully and I like blowing up people's lands with Sundering Titan. But still not a very consistent and easy to do thing. So plus, you know, you need those extra colors to really be able to get those evoke cast off of Grief, off of Muldrifter, and Solitude. Well, Muldrifter you don't need the extra colors, but just, you know what I'm saying. So you need these extra things, so it's hard to add in these artifacts in that regard. But overall, you know, I'm really happy with how these lists are going and how the modern meta is shaping up. So if you guys enjoyed this content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We're going to be having more content coming up that's modern focus, commander focus, and cube focus. Thanks for tuning in and watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next game. Thanks for tuning in and watching, guys. Nanman here. I just wanted to give a little bit of a shout out about all the other great content that is on all the channels that I've been producing. So if you guys are watching Magic related stuff, you know that on Modern Magic Mondays YouTube channel, we do have, of course, modern content. We've got commander content and cube content. There's also a podcast that kind of highlights different stuff that I'm doing in that scene, as well as kind of just other gaming related stuff. And that is, of course, Nanman's Nerd Corner. You can see that wherever podcasts are found. Of course, on my original gaming channel for YouTube, youtube.com/Nanman, you can be able to see video game stuff. There's Sea of Thieves content, Minecraft, lots of StarCraft stuff. There's a history, a look back at StarCraft 2 that kind of goes through the history of the start of esports, pretty much the explosion from 2010. So you guys can check out that sort of content. If you're liking this sort of stuff, you guys can also show additional support over on the Patreon. Of course, that is patreon.com/TheRealNanMan. Twitter is the same sort of deal, @TheRealNanMan. You guys can, of course, find all the links to all the content and all the stuff that I'm doing down below. But the best way to show those supports, guys, is to hit those subscribes, the follows, all that kind of good stuff. Spread the word. Let people know about all the cool stuff that I've got going on here. But thanks for tuning in and watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next game.